Although edited for television, tonight's thriller contains scenes of suspense and violence which may be unsuitable for young viewers. Parental discretion is advised.
So, here comes the big one. I made a point of saving this one for last because I know there's going to be a lot. Aliens Havoc by Mark Schultz as writer and a cast of thousands as billed in the credits. And there's a whole bunch of people in this book.
I think this whole thing needs to come with for anyone listening, needs to come with please try to have the comic to hand, because otherwise this is going to be a deeply mysterious sounding podcast.
So there's another one. Did you come back to this one, or was it there for you from the beginning?
No. I was all over this from day one. This was... There was no fucking about with this. The front cover alone has Fegredo, Kelly Jones, Kevin Nowlan, Guy Davis, Art Adams, and that's just the people I really like. And then there's other people that I only just like. It was an insane effort to do something really interesting with some amazing talent involved. And that Kent Williams cover is amazing. So no, I was there from day one with this.
Kent Williams is a guy who sometimes blows me away and sometimes just underwhelms for me. Something about this cover was really off-putting for me when it first came out. I did not buy the comic. It was another one where it came through the shop. I tossed it through the shop. I marveled at the diversity of artists that they had in the book. But I did not read this thing until this week.
Oh, wow.
A number of times because that extraordinary roster of artists. But part of it is that I just don't like looking at this cover, and I just find it off-putting.
Is that the fact that it's so fantastically off-model, which I hadn't thought about until looking at it now, but it's so far from model, as well as being like purple, it's very far from an Aliens cover. And then the fact that it's like an alien who's got like a jaws full of teeth, it feels like the kind of thing that an editor would have reluctantly declined because it's so far from model. Or you'd have expected the studio to say, but that's not really an alien though, is it? Lovely picture, but it's not really an alien. I could see how that could be a turn off. What turned you off?
Honestly, it's nothing to do with being on model. It's just like as a piece of art. As you mentioned, the lavender background is sort of off-putting. The alien flailing about, as roughly, sketchy as that is, it looks like something from a sketchbook. I do like the bits of sinew, that weird red meat section that we're seeing. It's not something you normally see. Like, oh look, it's a couple of skeletons and a spastic alien. Almost to some degree, it's almost too on model because of course we got to get the skeletons in there. We got to have the cool serpentine tail, but it just feels kind of half-assed to me. It's experimental. It definitely alerts the audience that this is not going to be the typical alien story, but it just visually it's just off-putting to me. It feels like something out of a sketchbook, and I don't think the subject matter does anything for me. It's just kind of goofy. Yeah, it just doesn't feel finished to me. There are parts of it that look finished, but a lot of it just seems like you're scraping together parts from other pieces and just kind of throwing it on there half-assed.
It's funny. I wonder if this is our fundamental differences. I could stick Rick Leonardi into this conversation quite easily, I think. I wonder if this just comes down to a fundamental difference in expectations of what we... Like, I listen to some of your shows where you're like, and he does a reasonable job. And then I Google it because I haven't read some obscure Terminator comic, and I'm like, fucking reasonable? Like, what? You're a very charitable man. Whereas I've got no issues with the sort of loosey-goosey nature of the painting here.
Again, with Kent Williams, one of our problems is everything he ever does, it's like, you can get Bill, huh? Okay, that's fine. You can be Bill. It's fine. Well, I'll take Kent, but clearly you can get Bill. Whatever project he works on looks fine, but it looks so much like Sienkiewicz, but not as good as Sienkiewicz. And so he's kind of like the Eddie Barrows of the impressionistic 80s artists. So that's part of the problem. It's just he always feels like the second-rate Sienkiewicz. Sienkiewicz will do stuff that's super sketchy, but he'll have an angle on it, or he'll add some sort of a gloss to it and just make it look fantastic. Williams, that's more the exception than the rule with him. Like, it's weird for me when Sienkiewicz blows a page, and it's weird for me sometimes when Kent Williams lands a page.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, I know.
No. Just different strokes. It's a topic for another conversation. But I mean, I've got issues with painted comic art in general, and part of that comes from working in retail and having customers who are only after painted comics. I remember having customers come over from the continent who'd be like, do you have anything by Duncan Fegredo? And I'd be like, yeah, we've got loads by Fegredo. I mean, a lot of it's not collected, but, you know, there are bits and pieces. What are you interested in, or what do you have? Anything that looks like Kid Eternity? It's like, yeah, well, no, you only painted that one thing. Okay. And all they wanted was like a passion for painted comics. Whereas for me, most painted comic artists do better work when they're drawing. So I prefer George Pratt's pen and ink. I prefer Kent Williams' pen and ink. I prefer John J. Muth's pen and inks. And so it's funny to me that some people actually want the painted stuff. So yeah, and Sienkiewicz, he's probably the only person who I'm kind of on the fence about. I love his pen and ink, but his painted stuff is obviously so definitive and specifically his.
And the one thing he can't do as well with a pen and ink is those light effects, those extraordinary light effects that he can only do with the painted work. And it's one of the defining aspects of his work, especially in the 80s. It's something he doesn't do very much anymore, and I really miss that. You know, I mean, I realized for Sienkiewicz it was almost like equivalent to J.J. Abrams and the lens flares, where he felt the need to effects, but they were so freaking cool.
Yeah, so he did all that stuff, and then he did Stray Toasters, which I loved, and then the painted comics pretty much disappeared after, like, Brought to Light or whatever. But pen and ink wise, there was 2 issues of Oni, double feature, A River in Egypt. That was supposed to be the start of something that never went anywhere, but it was 2 gorgeous pen and ink comics. And then Hulk Sentry, which was, I heard recently from Paul Jenkins, was a concession. Like, Paul Jenkins was like, will you draw it? And he was like, I'm not really interested unless I can do like half panel pages. And Paul Jenkins was like, I can write that. And so the Hulk Sentry one shot is probably the last proper Bill Sienkiewicz comic so far anyway. And it was just a vanity project to get Bill Sienkiewicz to draw stuff. Gorgeous as it is, but it does miss all that amazing sort of people standing on beaches and things that you get in Electro Assassin and Daredevil, whatever it was called, that Daredevil graphic novel.
Oh, Love and War, yeah.
Love and War, yeah.
You doing okay, man?
Yeah,
Jesus.
sure.
Where you been?
I must have knocked off.
For a day. Man, you know you was in trouble.
I had the strangest dream. Nightmares.
Well, you look like shit.
Feel like shit.
Let's just start going through here. So the first 3 pages are by Leif Jones and John Stokes. I like this stuff. This all looks cool. I like this.
Yeah.
It looks different than any of the Alien projects I've looked at recently. Little Tony Harris in there, I think, but it's a little bit more caricatured. And apparently this was a new artist. I think this is a person who went on to doing like maybe storyboards or character designs for movies and such, and did the design work for the ship and the suits and everything else. Again, it's not an artist whose style you're going to immediately recognize because this artist didn't do very much in comics, but I do think it gets things off to a good start.
Yeah, for sure. You say Tony Harris? I know the inker John Stokes from other stuff, but yeah, Tony Harris, kind of a John K. Snyder as well, that angular thing, but no, it's really nice.
And then we have your guy Fegredo, and he's also the painter of the second cover. I very much prefer that second cover. I had issues with Fegredo early on because my first exposure to him was with stuff like Kid Eternity, and didn't he do the ongoing series in pen and ink?
No, that was Sean Phillips.
He's prone to these autumnal colors, and initially I had trouble with that, but as I've gotten older and looked at more of his work, I've really come to appreciate it, especially his work at Dark Horse. I think part of the problem is I didn't like his DC stuff as much as the Dark Horse stuff, but especially the face hugger coming directly at the reader. That's a really striking cover. I like that one a lot, and I enjoyed his pen and ink art here. The one thing I will say is it very much like this page looks like a Dark Horse Aliens comic book page. This is almost like the default. This is what I expect one of these books to look like. From this time period, this is the exact kind of art that I'm expecting.
Yeah, color-wise, so Fegredo's colorblind, so I think he's got a very specific palette that probably comes in part from that. That second issue cover, I sort of like it, fair enough. So much of it could almost just be like a kidney thrown at the cover.
Just an organ, right?
Yeah, whereas the proposed I get it, and we can come back to this about the general sort of conceit about the perspective of the comic. And so I get that the cover is told from the perspective of you being the camera, if you like, you being the viewer. But the sketch of the other proposed cover, where you see it coming out of and I presume this is in the collection you're reading, where it's got these kind of extras. Are you seeing this stuff? Sorry, and that's not good for podcasts, but do you get this stuff in the omnibus, I guess?
Yeah, I like the shot where it's actually coming out of the opening egg. I think it looks a lot, I think that's a bolder image. I think it tells more of a story. I prefer that, and I wish they'd let him continue in that direction. And the same thing with the Art Adams panel they made him redraw. The audacity. And he wasn't super happy about it either. I'm sure they had to pay him for that panel, though, that swap out. But yeah, I think that I respect committing to the bit, but let's let the man paint his cover. The cover doesn't have to fit with the perspective. The one panel that Art Adams got wrong, well, we just looked at a story where they couldn't even get the lettering right on any of the pages. Let the panel fly. It's fine.
Is it worth maybe taking a step back and addressing the conceit of the comic, which is that we're seeing there's like a ghost of some kind who's possessing different members of a team of about 15,000 from my reading. Like, they're completely interchangeable. I appreciate the conceit and I appreciate the efforts to tell the story, but this idea of like this ghost who can't stay with any one character for too long, and throughout 44 pages of comic we're constantly seeing someone's different perspective, so the names don't mean anything as you're reading it, and then the editors getting the artists to change stuff because we need to make sure we're seeing it from Clegg's point of view. Who the fuck's Clegg? I don't care. It's a very strange thing. Like, it's ambitious, it's gorgeous. I appreciate the attempt to get like a storytelling like to take an art jam and get a consistency to it by having a specific angle or somebody doing the layouts or whatever, like you would with Keith Giffen doing 52 or whatever. That will make sense. But I found I like the art. I find it unjarring because there is this kind of device to it, so all the changes feel natural. But I don't know any of the characters. They've got no specific voices. They've got no specific looks that you can follow from one artist to the next. So the whole thing just sort of falls apart in that sense. But I mean, it's really pretty.
I'll be honest with you. Part of it might have been that Aliens comics of late have been homework. They've been a chore. And so I will read them at the end of my day before I go to sleep because I'm like, okay, I got to read X number of pages tonight because I got to record on this Saturday and that kind of thing. So that might be part of it. But honestly, until I read the back matter in the comic books that explain what they were doing and why they had to make changes, I didn't even notice.
100%.
Yeah, and the other thing, if anything, it kind of confused me somewhat because you kept having those disembodied balloons, and I recognized what that was. I recognized that there was some force that's going between the members. That's explained well enough. It didn't occur to me that the reason why it's disembodied is I'm the speaking voice. I'm the person that's being inhabited at this time. So it just didn't land with me. And again, I had to have it explained to me. And again, I might be dense, but also it clearly didn't matter. It didn't affect my understanding of the story. It just affected my realization that there was a gimmick in play.
Yeah.
It didn't matter, and it wasn't worth anybody's effort. But I do respect that they were trying to find a way of unifying the artists, because there was extremely disparate artists in this book. I think that you want to find a way of narratively getting everybody on the same page as much as possible while also indulging in all the differences. So I respect that they gave it that much thought. It just didn't do anything for me personally. I don't think it was a necessity in the storytelling.
Yeah, they could have done just as well with like Mark Schultz does thumbnails and then everyone follows more or less the direction of the story. Like,
honestly, I could see them doing that, but I appreciated how different everybody's pages were from each other, not just in the style, but in the approach for the most part. So I as much as I can see that being a valid way of doing that, I'm actually glad they didn't go that way because it really changed things up a lot. And once again, the novelty is something I need. Feed that to me. I need the novelty at this point. A bunch of people trapped on a ship. It's a passenger ship, just like there's a passenger ship in Aliens vs. Predator, Deadliest of the Species, just like it was a passenger ship in the Alchemy story, you know. So it's like, and especially reading these all together, they all start to run together. So I'm literally having to stop and think about which story does this element from, because there's so much samey. So if the thing that keeps me engaged in the story is wild variations in the art style that I need that. Don't take that away from me, please.
Yeah, I get that. I think this comic is a noble experiment full of just tons and tons of gorgeous art that
it's like
is
Fegredo,
coherent despite itself.
Yeah, with Fegredo page, he's the only one who does these cool light reflections on the helmets. Now, admittedly, they're not wearing the helmets throughout the whole story, but it's something that he's the only one who's doing all those little light bubbles across everybody's domes, and it's cool. You know, it's like, hey, that's a nice little bit. The very next page, you've got something that's more standard. You got a little bit of gleam to the sides, nothing that's going to really grab your attention the way the big bubbles did on the Fegredo. So, and this was Disraeli, and of course, Disraeli draws nothing like Fegredo, and it's like, oh, cool. What's on this page? What's on this page? What's on this page?
Disraeli's great. I know him from Kingdom of the Wicked was the first thing I read of his, which was an Ian Edgerton thing, and it was about a fantasy author, let's say like a Neil Gaiman, Terry Pratchett type fantasy author whose fictional world comes back to bite him in the arse when he sort of ends up he gets cancer and gets like a brain tumor and gets sucked into one of his fictional worlds. And Disraeli drew that in one of his many styles that he's had over the years. But this is probably closer to the style that he's used for the last few years, and it's a really good page. It's nice.
And then we move on to John Totleben, and again, completely different look, but he's still kind of saddled with a bunch of guys in astronaut suits talking up until the last big impactful panel where the aliens are coming down. And, there's a lot of motion lines. There's not a lot of detail. It looks very cool. Strong sense of motion. And also I like that he's not sitting there and looking at a photograph clearly. He's just giving you the basic impression of what these aliens are supposed to look like. You're not supposed to be sitting there looking at the detail. You're supposed to be like, they're coming at me. And he gets that across very well. And obviously his horror bona fides come into play here.
That first panel, right? You got 3 characters. One on the left, one in the middle, one on the right. The one in the middle is looking straight at us. One on the left says, "Shut up, Avril." The one in the middle says, "Poncel, what are you staring at?" The one on the right says nothing at all. I guess that in this particular panel, we are Poncel, so she's talking to us because we're staring. But having a third character in the panel who's saying nothing makes you think that she's talking to him because he's the one who's staring and saying nothing. To be honest, it's not a drum. I won't keep banging this drum because I think the mechanic of the story falls apart a lot as the story goes on. But John Totleman's great, and it's a great take on the aliens as well. And like you say, there's nothing sort of slavish. He's not sitting there looking at Geiger books to work out how to draw stuff. So no, it's a nice page.
Well, it's one of these things too where I think this story is about 7 pages, and then everything else is repeating motifs, jamming, noodling. It's a fish concert of comics where it's like, okay, here's another shot of a group of indistinct astronauts getting attacked by aliens. Here's a shot of them arguing with each other. Here's a shot of them running. It's over and over again, drawn different ways, interpreted different ways, and then trying to find stuff to put in the middle of these things to make it seem like you're progressing with a story instead of it basically just being different artists' interpretations of the same few scenes. So then we go on to Arthur Adams, obviously, one of the most stylish, energetic artists ever. I like that he does the bit where he has 2 of the panels encircled half splash. It looks cool, but also I have to say it definitely does not help the horror. Like going from Totleben to Arthur Adams, these are 2 different movies. One of these is a horror comedy and one of this is a full-on spook show. They're not the same movie.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the panel that they had him redraw and thinking, he didn't need to do that. I'm glad there's more Art Adams in the universe, more Art Adams art in the universe.
Well, if it had been
but you didn't
reduced at a proper size instead of that postage stamp they give us, that would have been helpful.
Yeah, but I tell you what I quite like on this page is you got Art Adams. So the first panel, you got the alien tail disappearing off into the vents or whatever. But then on the next panel, you got ambiguous looking extension hose type stuff. As far as Art Adams doing horror goes, you've got different stuff going on in the background that could be mistaken for horrific elements. So it constantly lends itself to there's threats around. He's using the background to continue the tension.
Yeah, I almost wish the colorist had less distinction between the aliens and all those pipes, so that you it's almost like camouflage where it's like, okay, where does one stop and the other start? That would have been pretty cool.
Yeah, because I've actually literally just noticed, and again, not great audio, but the second panel, the alien is there in the very top upper right corner, but you don't notice him at all because you're quite distracted by this like vacuum cleaner pipe going up into the air vents. And like you say, if the whole thing had been drawn coloured flat or coloured dark or coloured, I don't know, less high contrast, then you would have ended up with a whole kind of soupy, mysterious shape rather than a lot of very specific objects. But that little alien grinning up in the top right corner of that panel is otherwise you wouldn't notice.
And then the next page is one of those things that only happens for comic books on a deadline. The page is supposed to be drawn by Gianni. He was behind on a deadline on, I think, The Shadow, and so his roommate Jeff Darrow inks it. So the combination of these two artists you would never see under any circumstance, I would think, unless somebody was facing deadline doom. And it's very interesting because the end result is neither one of these artists and both of these artists, and it's really cool to me.
God bless it. There's no other reason for the page to exist. So yeah, God bless it. And does it follow the rules of the first person perspective? I haven't thought about it. I don't really care.
I don't think that you could stand off to one side while the aliens were chasing some other people. I'm pretty sure one of those guys would break off and head toward you too. So I guess, again, deadline doom, you're going to get Jeff Darrow to redraw his panel. I don't think you've got that kind of time, buddy.
Yeah. Have you seen, just as an aside, sorry, I know in the Rocketeer Deluxe edition, you can see because Gary Gianni did breakdowns for Dave Stevens to draw over the top of. So Gary Gianni and Art Adams, I don't think Jeff Darrow, but I might be wrong, but all of these guys were clearly very much in the mix of one another. So Gianni and Darrow is really quite lovely to see.
And then the next, again, striking difference, we've got George Pratt. I really, really love his aliens here. So it's another one of those situations where it's definitely not about whether or not you're on model, because these things are barely perceptible as anything from the franchise or any entity that we're familiar with from these comic books.
Yeah.
They're very impressionistic. I really love how vague the heads are, especially like there's no impression of eyes. The shapes are irregular, the heads are especially. The tail is almost like something out of Beetlejuice with the stripes and everything. It's just these things with long teeth, jagged teeth, long claws, creepy, spooky. I freaking love it. It's awesome.
Yeah, no argument from me. This goes back to like my general feeling about what the franchise is, you know. The idea that the editors are going back to folk and saying, can you redraw that? Seems bonkers to me. Just let these folk run wild as long as they're not taking you too far off course. And then Igor Kordej, just the most sort of abused, and I don't like the word underrated, because the people that know how great he is, and he excelled on things like Tarzan Batman and all the various things he did with Darker McCann for Dark Horse over the years. And it's a great looking page. Well done, Kordej, in my opinion.
You took the words out of my mouth. Extraordinary artist, not appreciated to the degree he should be, and especially by the X office, extremely mistreated. And I love this page. It's gorgeous. I love how in a book that's full of indistinct people, every single one of these people has a different face, different quality to them, but they're all obviously inhabiting the same space. They're all being hit by the same lighting. It's very, very cool. I love that page.
Did you ever read Smoke that Kordej drew? Alex DeCampi wrote it and Kordej drew it.
I might have bought it. I don't think I read it.
Okay, it's like a big sort of espionage, near future thing, but Kordej really, really excelled on these 3 prestige format issues. And then there was a follow-up, which was, I think it was Smoke and Ashes. And Ashes was done by various artists. I've just got the first half. Some of the best Kordej you'll see, unless you're in France, where you'll get to see Kordej drawing amazing comics night and day. But we don't anymore because English comics community treated him like shit. So.
He didn't contribute to Zero with Elias Cott, did he?
No, I don't think so. I mean, maybe a couple of years earlier he could have, but yeah, he's definitely close to near as damn it, I would say.
Next page is Paul Lee. Not wild about this one.
Just looks like a page from Sandman Mystery Theater by a fill-in artist or something. Yeah, it's fine.
Next page, since you already referenced him, John K. Snyder. And it's funny because you can see some stylistic similarities to the starting artists. I got to look at the reference again. Leif Jones definitely doesn't look the same as those pages in this particular instance, though.
No, it's true.
Snyder's a guy who's hit and miss with me, and not just from project to project or even page to page, sometimes panel to panel. Some of his stuff can just be too abstract or too rough, and then he'll do something that completely blows me away, and that's very much the case in the panel with the alien here. It's such an extraordinary looking alien, and it's an interesting idea because it's one long panel that fills a third of the page, and then all the action is to the left of it. So it lets you know that these people are aware of the presence of this alien the entire time, and because the alien is not rendered in a lot of detail, it's almost like looking like it's decaying, and you can tell that it's not really designed to be colored. It really is designed for black and white, and probably they should have all been one shade. The whole panel probably could have been one shade, but the particular sickly shade of green they used and the way that contrasts with the white of the teeth and the saliva, something that probably wasn't designed to be in color. I think they make work in color for the most part, except for the digital funk around the edges of the mouth where they're creating a line where the artist didn't. I love that abstraction of what the finer details are not there. It looks like it's modeling. It looks gross. It's so cool. Such a great take on the alien, but also like how, because the alien is taking up that whole third of a page, you can feel the astronauts and the work that they're doing being influenced by the feeling of the presence of this creature lurking in their company.
Yeah, no, 100%. Nothing more to add. I think here I am adding. I think that he's given how he generally has a very kind of impressionistic style. You know, it's a very stylized anyway. It's interesting that the astronauts, the guys that he draws in that left stack really have personality as well. So it's not Igor Kordej, but they really do look like they're real people too.
Next up is Mark A. Nelson. This is one of the pages I'm least enthused about, not because it's a bad page, it's fine. He takes the odd choice of deciding not to feature any of the human characters outside of silhouettes and an odd hand. It's all about the technology and the alien. Problem is, I've seen so much Mark Nelson work on the alien's property. To be teased with a single page by him, why'd you bother? So it's not a bad page, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just not enthused about it because it's not bringing anything new to the table for me.
Yeah, and even like a couple of panels in it where there's like hands, there's a hand grabbing this handle and a hand with a gun in it towards the bottom of the page. It's unclear whether those are the hands of our perspective character or is he looking at somebody else's hand nearby him. I presume it's supposed to be the character that we are, which makes the angles that are chosen pretty odd. So I think it's another thing where like it's falling victim to the mechanic or the conceit of the exercise,
Talking of the conceit, next page is Peter Bagge of Hate fame, and clearly the intention is for us to be seeing through the eyes of the fellow who just grabbed the gun, especially since that fellow is shooting the gun to drive the aliens away, and yet we're seeing from an outside perspective. So the only way the conceit continues to work is if the intelligence has abandoned this person and woken up with a gun in their hand or decided, oh, shoot. You basically no-prize it. But I freaking love this page, especially the first half. Again, being a fan of Hate, it's just so bizarre and comical for me to see this art style, this approach to action interpreted for Aliens comics. But also I love the silhouettes of the aliens in the rafters and the little tails snaking out. This is a great page. Totally dig it.
Yeah. No challenges for me. Great page.
Next page is Brian Horton. Not familiar with the artist. Not really blown away by anything I'm seeing on the page either.
Yeah, I know the name, but not enough to attach it to anything. So, yeah, it's okay.
Next page, Dave Taylor. Looks great. I love the female head on the first panel. I feel like he's doing Girl with the Pearl Earring or something. I didn't go and compare the two of them, but there's just a lot of character in the face. And then the final two panels has an alien emerging from a quasi-vagina, so definitely on model for Dave Taylor. This is the tongue lash that he did for Dark Horse.
Yeah.
Cool page, cool alien. Kelly Jones, kind of the opposite reaction as I had with Mark Nelson. With Nelson, it's like getting a page of his work, it's not enough for me. Give me a story or give me nothing. With Kelly Jones, if I only get one page of his Alien, since that's one of my favorite interpretations of the Alien, and again, one of the least faithful to the movies, I'll take it. It's an action shot. It could have been pulled from any of the miniseries he did previously. Don't care. It looks cool. It's Kelly Jones on Aliens. That's all I need.
Yeah, the colour job really favours it as well, you know. He didn't have so much luck with colour in the earlier stuff. Yeah. It's a really flattering colour job. Yeah, nice page. Guy Davis.
Yeah, Guy Davis. You said earlier that here's a page that looks like out of Sandman Mystery Theater. Well, even more so when Guy Davis is the one who actually is drawing it.
Yeah, but here's a guy who I would say understands the world that he's operating in squarely. And so the whole, particularly the lower half of the page, those two panels, 1, 2, 3, panels 4 and 5 really give you that perspective of being inside a character in the story. And this goes back to, just to take us back ages, like Fegredo in his last panel gave us like the inside of the helmet view to sort of show that we're looking at the character who's inside the helmet. But there's very little effort to try and do anything similar throughout the rest of the book. But I think Guy Davis's slightly vertiginous approach to walking along the corridors, whatever, is supposed to give us a little bit of that as well.
I feel like some of the artists, like they had to talk to the artists, be like, okay, what do you want to draw? Are you okay? I want a page on the alien. It has to be a page on the alien. And it feels like he got I don't really care. I'll draw whatever you want me to draw. Great. You get to draw the astronauts and a bedroom. It's just that thankless, I'm just a storyteller. I don't care what I'm drawing kind of thing. It's like, great. You get stuck with the grunt work. Have fun with that.
Yeah. But then he's Guy Davis, so he's like, yeah, fuck it, I can do it. Like Atomo's Memories, writing a story about an asteroid with a bedroom with a load of boring shit going on in it, and yet just being brilliant enough to make it interesting the whole time. This even has that. It's like, it's going down a corridor, are they? Well, here's a corridor that'll make you want to know more about that corridor. God bless Guy Davis. And
the next page is Kelly Strom, who I'm not familiar with. I understand that they did the acid bath case, which I vaguely remember being solicited back in the day, but I never read it myself. I really dig this page.
It's like a one-shot, right? Like a fat dark
or graphic novel, maybe? Or a prestige format book. I don't even know if I ever had the book cross my hands. I think it's more that I recognize the name from a solicitation copy from a preview or something, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But there's an artist who goes with the conceit. You actually see the possessed person reflected in a mirror. Nice work there.
Yes.
And then this person went through a lot of trouble drawing a lot of hoses and a bunch of face huggers. And it reminds me, the style reminds me a little bit of Art Adams. There's definitely those areas where there's hyper rendering going on, but it's more cartoonish. The proportions, or especially the heads, are much larger than the bodies. Are supposed to be almost kind of a chibi quality to it. I dig the page, and I like especially, you got the one panel where the force, the intelligence, is impregnating itself in the mind of a new victim, host, however you want to rephrase it. And you've even got like the panels become dialogue balloons that are pointing toward the head as they're going glassy-eyed. It was just a nice take.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's really nicely done. And, you know, I think, who am I thinking of with the Renee somebody? There was somebody who did like an Oni comic with half of Penn and Teller and Dark Horse Comics as well. And I think, forgive me, I'm digressing. Fuck, it doesn't matter. I feel like I'm sure I know this artist from somewhere, but no, I think it's one of the strongest pages in the book, actually. But the one thing I was going to flag is that it's one of those pages that was redrawn. But towards the back, you got some weird like Seth Fisher type take on the same panel that they had them redraw, where it's like, have you got access to this? Where it's loads of tiny versions of the characters on each other's shoulders holding weapons. Yeah,
it was much more of a vertical panel, to the point where you figure like they maybe had to redraw the whole page rather than just the panel.
Yeah, it's like a bonkers, surreal panel as opposed to what we get in the comic. But yeah, that last panel where with the panel borders used to show the main character moving is excellent, really good.
Oh, and I just realized too, on my first reading, I had seen the facial expression reflected on the jar of Xenozip, which again is a bit of a problem for me because these guys act like they've never heard of aliens before, but they immediately recognize Xenozip in its liquid form, you know? But I thought that maybe the force was coming from the Xenozip on my first reading, And now I'm realizing what's happening is we're seeing the reflection of the host in the jar as they're looking at their next host, and that's why the lines are moving towards them in that fashion. So very clever framing of that panel there.
Yeah, just unfortunately limited to one page.
Yeah.
You know, if that conceit were carried through the whole thing, then it might have worked better as an exercise.
And then the next page is your boy Jay Stevens.
Yeah, nice and clean, not particularly exciting.
Not giving anything to do, so it's the best with what you got, right?
Yeah, there's a very attractive main character, but I would say that character, the character in the top middle panel with his sort of Iron Man looking, his Tony Stark looking facial hair, was like, pretty sure that's the first time I've seen that character in the book.
Oh, absolutely. Nobody has had a soul patch so far. And then the next page is some Jerry Bingham, who clearly was having his own deadline troubles because this is barely even recognizable. I think the layout's fine, but it's just not fully rendered, and it's really underwhelming as a result. And this is a key page too, so he got something to do and he didn't finish doing it. Yeah,
the bottom panel's great and the top panel's great, but the whole thing doesn't hang together very well.
Jerry Bingham's the guy who's consistently frustrated me because especially in the 80s, I just absolutely adored his style. I loved like his character designs for the Protectors, the revival of the Centaur characters over at Malibu, his Batman work. He had great covers in that time period. I just really loved his stuff. I think he did character work for New Universe. But when it comes to actually sitting down and drawing a freaking comic book, he's not the most reliable dude and never has been. And this is an example of him coming up short where he could have really blown up. This would have been a good showcase for him if he'd finished the job.
Yeah, you have a sense that he's a could have been, no?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, he was a contender for a while there, especially around the time of Son of the Demon, but it just couldn't get the work done consistently enough to become more than a notable cover artist.
Yeah, Son of a Demon was about his book, no? There was nothing else that you'd be able to point to him for.
That was really probably the peak. Yeah, as far as relevance within the comic book industry, probably that's correct. Yeah. And then the next page we get Kevin Nowlan, and I've gotten so much Kevin Nowlan inking over the course of my working on this project that it's just really nice to see a page that was entirely him and just see his particular layouts, his particular rendering style, especially the fine lines on some of these characters. Very cool page.
Yeah, but nothing makes me think that I'm seeing it through anyone else's eyes. Like all of that's gone again, you know, this whole idea of like, oh, I'm the mysterious ghost occupying someone on the team. It's like, no, it's just a great looking Kevin Nowlan page. And those spacesuits at the bottom look amazing.
And of course, ultimately the main character is the black female scientist, and she's framed in a four-pointed diamond panel, and it's like, this is just a comic book page. There's nothing here that has anything to do with any sort of specialized POV. I think that some of these guys, no, you've got your page, I've got my money, fuck off, you know. You want another Kevin Nowlan page? Pay me for another Kevin Nowlan page. Like, okay, no, we're good. We've got the one.
You all right? What? Something's moving inside. Watch his head. Oh, shit. Watch his head. Is he on the left side?
No. What the fuck? I don't know.
I'm gonna get the med kit.
I do not need this shit fucking on my knife, man. Fucking on my shirt. Shit.
Hey, stop your motor. Get down.
Oh, shit. Are you seeing this?
Especially because at this point, I think we're on the second issue. I think some of these guys just said no. So the next page is Frank Terran, who hasn't done a ton of Alien stuff. He did a short story that I covered a while back. He did a cover. I think he's a good fit for the material. I think that rough style suits the aliens. Again, very impressionistic. You really don't get a good, clear view of them, and I think that works well for the horror. And you've got a guy who's got like space dementia or something. That gets sold well. His terror gets sold well. The only thing that does get me is for some reason they feel the need to spell Git with a G-I-T, so I guess he's either supposed to be a Southerner or a Brit or something, but
sure,
we don't spend enough time with these characters for you to get away with doing that sort of writing work.
That sort of shorthand, yeah.
It just looks like you just spelled the shit.
Yeah. he's amazing. The Alien special he did was fantastic. He did 2 issues of Punisher, which are possibly my favourite issues of Punisher ever, which was the Andy Lanning written story with Punisher falling into like a cage fighting match while fighting some Russian mobster or something. Just he's incredibly capable of brutal and does brutal and violent very well. He doesn't get a chance to shine here so much, but nonetheless it's pretty enough.
Well, and he gets an action beat. That's poor Kevin Nolan's got a bunch of people standing around, so he got his shot.
Yes, some guns get fired and there's a nice use of a bullet spread or whatever, so yeah, good for him.
I am spending entirely too much time looking at the heart shape of the balding, overweight, middle-aged man, though. On his, the heart-shaped butt of the middle-aged man. He's really got that saddle down, and it's really kind of swaying around the page and stuff. It's hard to miss.
Well, I think actually if you invert it, that's the image that we get on the cover of issue 2. It's just like, it's like an arse hugger instead of a face hugger.
He's wearing his kidney a little low. Next page is by Joel Naprstek. I don't know who this person is. I don't know if they ever did anything else. It's okay.
Yeah, I do know they did something else, but I don't remember what it was. So not going to lose any sleep over it. And the page is okay. Although given the realistic style of the figures at the bottom, I've just noticed that the drawing of the alien in the top panel is pretty fucking funny because it looks like Sergio Aragonés drew it. So at the bottom it looks like John Paul Leon, and at the top it looks like Sergio Aragonés. It's quite a funny.
That's all Sharpie, yeah. And then the next page is kind of the one that started it all. Before we ever talked about anything related to Havoc, we talked about the one page that Travis Charest, however you want to pronounce it, did. That alien needs some moisturizer.
Yeah, I mean, that page is, all I can see is an artist saying, how quick can I get this done? So we've got the top page with some shattering. Top panel, shattering glass. Second panel, space. Third panel, stuff. Fourth panel, the same panel, statted, and then a load of black ink thrown over it because the door's closed now. I mean, even before I had any insight as to what these folk go through, and particularly when they're up against deadlines, this page reeked of laziness, despite the fact that everything on it is very impeccably drawn. Very pretty, but properly phoned in.
Those lines are so thin, though. It's like, like you're doing... It's like you have to know exactly how much you can get away with in reproduction to get away with lines so thin. There's so many thin lines, man. It looks cool.
Yeah, it's testing the limits of my reading glasses, to be honest.
Right.
I'm like, if I look closer, do I see any more? And the third panel is amazing, with 3 figures on it. One of them suspended in the air and all sort of struggling to so there is some action to it. But that top panel with just like a blue background with some broken glass.
Definitely polar bear in the blizzard action there.
Exactly, yeah.
I do not for a minute believe that he drew the grate in the bottom right-hand corner. That is a photograph that's been Xeroxed and he's drawn over that. He did not draw that Joe work.
Yeah, now I'm going to have to put the light on my phone because I really... Oh, God, yeah. Oh, but that's like a... So there's a grey. Maybe got Richard Bennett to ink it.
Right. What about that gun? I don't think you drew that gun either, man.
No, but that gun looks... Yeah, I could barely see it. But that gun is similar sort of texture, right? Mm-hmm. So it looks like he's found a photo of an Aliens movie gun on a grate that he's managed to stat into the comic. Fucking hell. Well, I mean, credit for the work put into doing that, you know?
You worked harder to find the reference to borrow from than you did on the actual drawing.
Exactly. Invest that time in actually drawing.
The next page is P. Craig Russell. This one was really interesting to me, especially because we've been talking a bit about lettering tonight. And man, can't miss his lettering.
So that Joel Naprstek has just come to me. He did like a Predator comic that you've either read or you'll get to.
Okay.
Like that's why I know the name. Sorry, I'm stepping on you. P. Craig Russell.
No, you're fine. It's bound to happen anyway. We're trying to talk over the internet across the Atlantic, so it's going to happen. And I've done it way more to you than you've done to me anyway. So that's P. Craig Russell's a guy I always forget about it when I'm talking about letterers that I love. But man, he's one of those guys where you know his stuff as soon as you see it. And it's weird because the page itself doesn't have a ton of Craig hallmarks. It's more like this panel looks like a P. Craig Russell. This one doesn't. There's another one where he in no way is on model with the alien to the point where if he wanted to print it someplace else, he wouldn't have to pay at Fox to do it. But it looks cool. I dig it. The whole page is awesome. It's a whole different thing, though. It doesn't feel of a piece in a book that's not made to be of a piece.
Yeah, I mean, so that top panel for me feels like it could be out of Robin 3000. There's that thing of the figures sitting on the horizon line. They're like stationed on top of the panel, the bottom panel border, which is nice. And then he manages to do the hands, the perspective of the hands, as if they're the hands of our perspective, of our point of view character, very well. His aliens are fucking funny. Not quite Gil Kane, Wildcats Aliens cover aliens, but pretty close. It's fine. I can see it's P. Greg Russell, but it's not playing to any of his strengths or anything like that. But it's pretty. I
was going to make a Brood joke, but really more like Vamp from old style Buscema comics, or maybe the hybrid from ROM or something.
Yeah.
So next up is Adrian Potts. Not familiar with this artist either. Not 100% ready for prime time because there's some stuff in here that's just a little awkward in a way that you'd expect from any comics, but did not spare on the details at all. And I really dig how many of the details are like familiar things that I would see in an industrial area with the fans and the tubing and everything else. It looks almost like they used their own insides of their own computer for the reference for this space.
Yeah.
It looks cool, a lot of detail, but a little awkward.
Notably, those on the second panel, you got those pink straps, you know, and I haven't seen those straps for about 30 years. So it's funny that it's futuristic, but there's particular kind of cables that are like red licorice. Do you know what I mean? It's like they don't exist at all. They didn't exist 2 years after this comic was published.
Well, you know, it's Blade Runner pimping Toshiba Film and Atari. You know, it's like it's only so futuristic, guys. We really thought this was going to last a little longer.
This is like how can I put it? A non-photo reference Richard Pere's Rain or something. You know, it's like it's fine. You could happily never see it again, but kudos.
So I pulled my list of artists from Grand Comic Book Database. I think this is an instance where they might have flipped, though, because I'm really sure that the next page after the one we're going to is the Sean Phillips page, but they say that the page I'm looking at is, and I think that this is the Rebecca Guay, and I was really wanting to defer to you. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, no, Sean Phillips is the page after next.
Yeah, I think so. We're good. We're on the same page on this, though, because I knew you'd know for sure.
You know, the credits are the wrong way around. In the comic, it says Aidan Potts who did the strawberry licorice.
Yeah.
And then it says Sean Phillips, then Rebecca Guay. But those are the wrong way around.
Yeah.
Because it's 100% Sean Phillips on the subsequent page. So Rebecca Guay was like Magic the Gathering, and
she did some Vertigo stuff, right?
Yes, you're right.
Maybe like Black Orchid or something.
Yes, like later, and then covers and stuff as well. But to my mind, she's Magic the Gathering. Though I'd have to Google it to check. But not a lot of comics.
And I made a point of not doing this because I figured anything that I couldn't come up with a reference for, you could. And if neither one of us could, then we didn't need to bother with it.
It probably wasn't worth it.
Right, exactly.
It was a Vertigo miniseries, which was like 4 painters, and I think she was one of them. It was like John Bolton. I have an idea.
She not Books of Magic, right?
No, which was the same idea. But anyway, I digress. I don't have the answer. It's like a rubbish anecdote. It doesn't matter. But yeah, you're right. Vertigo stuff, but I'm also sure some Magic cards. But anyway, but this page is nice.
It is interesting. I like especially the last panel because it's just so abstract. You have to kind of know what you're looking at to even know what that is supposed to be. But that abstraction appeals to me because it gives you that sense of this unknowing creature coming out of the darkness. The issue I'm having is the page before that with the 3 aliens. I think that there had to be some photo reference because it really looks like guys in suits. Like there's nothing about their anatomy that makes them look particularly alien. It looks like a bunch of guys when they're waiting for the director to say action. And so that sort of takes away from a page that I wanted to heap more praise upon.
Which is funny because I seem to remember that being specifically referenced in like director's commentary and stuff, of like trying to avoid feeling like it's guys in suits, and then she just draws like blokes with alien helmets on. It's interesting in her last panel, like the angle of it and everything, there's something about that line towards the bottom that has kind of like a menacing smile kind of vibe to it.
Okay.
That, as well as the abstraction, adds a little something. But yeah, the 3 blokes stood around in alien suits on the panel before is a demerit.
And then, of course, we've got Sean Phillips, another one of your faves.
Mm-hmm. And heading towards peak Sean Phillips. So he and Fegredo were close and were sort of batting styles backwards and forwards. And they both struggled with discovering Mignola and then incorporating that into their styles. And I don't think it's telling tales out of school to say, like, they would tell each other off for, like, come on, that's a bit too Mignola, come on, what are you doing? And they sort of would beat each other up about being too heavy-handed. But this is really nice. This is like Hellblazer Sean Phillips. And as an added bonus, not one of the characters looks like him. That's a plus. Because most of his stuff incorporates one of the characters will be his likeness.
Mm-hmm. John J. Muth, who I'm used to more as a painter, so I'm not used to. I wouldn't recognize his line work naturally. I don't know how much I've ever been exposed to that. Is that even true, or is this another one of the ones where they've screwed up the credits? Because I'm looking at that and thinking it's possible. Like, if you were me guessing, just looking at the page, I think it looks a lot like Richard Pace, but he's not credited at all, so it wouldn't seem like it would be him.
Yeah, and so John J. Muth in his pen and ink work. Yeah, that's crazy. John J. Muth in his pen and ink work tends to be... He did a few issues of a Silver Surfer thing that Sienkiewicz inked. He did Seekers into the Mystery. He did every 5th issue. So Zuli did an arc, and then he did an issue, then someone else. And then he did an issue, or maybe more, of Sandman in pen and ink. But it was all like very Japanese brushy style. Like I struggle to believe it's John J. Muth.
Yeah, I think we missed the credit here because I'm looking a couple of pages ahead. I can much more easily see the page with the
that's John J. Muth.
Yeah, right. The one where it's mostly the black scientist lady who's talking to the people and she's been possessed longer than most, and she's talking about that's him. So I don't know who this other guy is, and they're to my knowledge they're never credited because they're not credited in the digital version. I don't think they're credited in the print version. It's not on Comic Book Database or Grand Comic Book Database. Like I said, I've put in my guess. I don't know. Do you have any guesses of who this artist might be?
No, imagine that.
It's 2 pages too, so there should be 2 different artists, but the style is fairly similar, so not sure.
Yeah, and it's definitely not Ron Randall, who's not someone I'm...
No, he's coming up. I know. I recognize his page when it comes up.
Wait, so let's keep going.
Yeah.
And then see who's missing at the end. But that's definitely not John J. Muth.
And then again, the Kilian Plunkett page is really obvious, and you being a fan, I think you can definitely see it, right?
Yeah, I mean it's just great. I just want more. Like,
he really gets in there and gets into the details of the aliens too.
Yeah, his version of the alien lines is so specific, but so gorgeous. I love it.
Yeah, he's definitely an all-star when it comes to the aliens artists in general. He's just someone who gets that world and just nails it, and also has such a distinct look. It's not like Kelly Jones's, does not look like Kilian Plunkett's, does not look like Mike Mignola's. You know, these guys separate themselves and are in a higher echelon than a lot of the other artists that have done aliens.
Yeah.
And then again, speaking of Ron Randall, this is clearly Ron Randall coming up next.
Okay.
And I don't like to disparage Ron Randall because I've got friends who are personal friends of his and all that kind of good shit. My pulse doesn't exactly pick up, but I think it's a good, solid, workmanlike page.
Yeah. It reminds me of like an Aaron Lepresti or someone like that, you know, without the politics.
It's more and more I'm having to make sure to vet the artist before I give him a compliment. Let me put it that way. Thankfully, that was never a real problem with me and Lepresti anyway. I was never super impressed with him.
No, me neither.
John Pound, who again did the coloring for Corbin on Alchemy, and underground artist. He definitely brings that perspective to this page. I like it. I think it looks cool. I especially like when the synthetics come out and they look like some sort of robot zombies. I just love that such a different take than what we usually get to see here. I dig how much fun he's having with all the pipes and all the space stuff. He's obviously having fun with this, and his enthusiasm is infectious.
Yeah, no, it's a great page, and then the stuff at the back showing his alternate takes or his first go around are pretty fun too. But what he landed on is really nice, and I think if you assume that all of these people had the Leif Jones character designs put in front of them, then that kind of influences a little bit the take. So I think his take here feels like, although it's nothing like the Leif Jones take, it's very much faithful to the model that Leif Jones set out for the characters at the beginning. For him, that may well speak to his experience of like 40 plus years. And he was the garbage pail kids guy. So he's a guy who's used to doing stuff on model as well as underground stuff. But it's a great page.
Now, he didn't do the actual airbrushing though, right? He just like come up with the characters and like design them or something for Garbage Pail Kids?
No, he was a painter.
He was, okay.
Yeah, so he was a full-on painter, which is probably how he ended up being the colorist on the Corbin stuff. If you Google him, yeah, he was the main painter for Garbage Pail Kids.
Cool.
Those things are mad. Like what they were like written by Spiegelman and drawn by John Pound or something.
Right.
It's fucking mental.
Worst place to make a living for damn sure. And that I bought packs of those back when I was a kid, so it was cool stuff. We dig it.
Well, and what a con, using the same art twice and coming up with different names.
Different names.
Billy Booger and, just ridiculous.
Yep.
Mickey Mookus and Billy Booger or whatever.
Right.
Just
Chase variant. They invented the Chase variant. So the next page is Gene Ha just being a fucking asshole. Like, he must have looked at the roster and decided, no, I will be the best. And he just puts every possible detail he can manage without just covering the entire page in ink. It's just so, I mean, I love it. It's great, but it's also so fucking excessive that it's like, this guy's clearly trying to prove something to somebody.
Yeah, no, it's a great page.
Yeah.
And largely focused on these otherwise disposable giant blue blokes. So John Pound introduces us to giant blue men with blonde hair, and Gene Ha disposes of them, and then they otherwise don't appear again in the story. Peculiar.
Yeah, but God, just like you'd think that this guy was designing currency for a very paranoid U.S. Printing press. Like, there's just so much detail. It's almost like, because he did the ABC comics with Alan Moore. I think this would have been about the same time frame for that too. It's like, okay, I'm doing a book with Art Adams. Okay, I'll show you Art Adams. I can't believe he decided that he needed to commit this much effort to a page. Travis Charest going to be here? Fuck Travis Charest. I'll show Travis Charest how to do a fucking aliens page. I'm not even going to, okay, he gets an alien on the last panel. But most of it is disposable synthetics and these assholes in the yellow suits. And it's like he just draws the living hell out of them.
So my thinking is that he's young enough to be committed. So he's young enough to look at the other artists on the roster and go, shit, I've got to bring my A game, but not mature enough like those artists to go, it's just a job. So he's upping his game while Kevin Nowlan's going, it's fine, I can just do some stuff. And Art Adams is going, yeah, I've been doing this for years. So he's maybe in that kind of in-between time where he's delivering 110% while Kevin Nowlan's going, it's only a fucking page, 80%.
As impressive as this is, it's super impressive. I'm still going to get more of a boner for 65% Kevin Nolan. I can't help it. I just can't help it. It's just that it's on my wavelength.
Yeah.
So next page I think is a really, really interesting piece. Let's see, this is Vania Zarouliov. This is a Russian artist who was at this time living in Edinburgh. Because I knew there was a Moebius in here somewhere, and at first I was like, wait, is this the Moebius? And it's like, no, this is a whole different thing. It's very cool. I don't know who this person is, and I don't know whatever happened to them.
Yeah, and it reminds me of stuff, it's got like a sort of Frank Turan, Jay Lee. There's all sorts of little bits that make you think of other people, but I really like the page. And then it was only on this reread that I was like, oh yeah, whatever happened to that person? And I've genuinely no idea. I assume more lucrative work elsewhere. Like I feel Dark Horse Comics might have suffered as being a bit of in the US, you could like farm leagues or whatever.
Sure. Yeah, I know what you mean.
So it's just like a proving ground where people could go, yeah, we'll take that one, we'll take that one, and we'll take that one, please. Just fuck everything up for everyone else.
One thing I'm noticing too, especially on these Alien books and some of the other franchise licensed stuff that they've done, I think because you had the Dark Horse movie studio, they put them into contact with a lot of movie people, concept artists, storyboard artists who were moonlighting in the comics because of the association and might have never done anything else, but because of that connection, the networking, they got a little Dark Horse thing here and there, because there's so many of these guys specific to Dark Horse, and especially ones that never work anywhere else. So you're right, there's some of these guys who definitely get pinched, but there's also guys that this is the only thing they ever do is this little thing for Dark Horse, and I feel like that's got something to do with the movie connection there.
Yeah, everything that they do is getting proofread by someone who works for 20th Century Fox, and then they disappear.
And then again, you could not get more different. Here's a page that's dark and cool and edgy and moody, and especially the black chick looks like, I don't know, like Grace Jones or some stuff, where it's just like, oh, she's intense, man. She looks so, she goes from like some random chick that's among the astronaut guys to like one of the Dor Milaje or something for this one page, right? And then Sergio Aragonés for the big climactic scene where the guys have been, the explorers have been armed and they're shooting at the aliens, and like you said, the aliens are just these weird big cackling eggplant head things. Just like this is the big finale. This is where the blood's gonna start getting splattered. Is on the Aragonés page. The fuck.
Yeah, and it feels like it could have been spread out over 2 pages. If it were anyone else, it would have been 2 pages of like big action, but instead we get 1 page of like giggling aliens. It's very funny and sort of sweet. Like I just, I'm a big enough Aragonés fan that I forgive it. And that last panel with alien acid blood going all over the shop is great. And
again, it's a gross out moment from out of Mad Magazine. It might as well be snot. And the guy's even got to do his little like one eye closed, tongues out. Ew, he can't help himself. And then you got the next page, John Paul Leon, where I feel like it's just an actual, like he starts with a black page and he just goes in with white out for the parts that he wants you to be able to see.
Yeah, I think it's a specific point in his career, just shortly after Challenges of the Unknown. But yeah,
it's actually contemporaneous. If I remember correctly, when they were talking about the artists and the back matter, they mentioned specifically that was the book he was working on at that time period.
Oh, okay, yeah, because that leaned very heavily into black.
Yeah,
but yeah,
no, a very narrow window because that only lasted about a year or so, right?
Yes, exactly. And then do you remember the Batman black and white story he did with Walt Simonson, where it was just completely detail free? It's a very, very peculiar looking story, like an absolute diehard John Paul Leon fan. That is so black that it takes me out of it a little bit. And this is heading that way a little bit, where the lack of definition sort of takes away from it a little bit. I mean, it's still a great page, but
yeah, I was actually going to say is a lot of his stuff doesn't work for me, but I think in this material, this context, it actually, I think it suits material very well. And I kind of more not seeing him do more alien stuff because this fits very well.
Yeah, Tommy Lee Edwards did an alien story, right? It was like an alien short story with Darko McCann.
I don't recall. See, it's like you're talking about the Batman black and white stuff, and I bought the miniseries when it was coming out, and there were some story, like I don't think I've read the material since it came out. Like I bought it, I read it, I enjoyed it, I put it in a box, and I don't think I've brought it out ever since. I might even bought a trade of it and didn't read the trade either. So the stories that stick with me are like the Brian Boland one, the Ed McKeever one where he's doing the autopsy.
The Kevin Nowlan.
Yeah, and then there are other ones like you mentioned where it's like that's vaguely familiar, but they didn't stick because I'm just kind of nodding, going sure, yeah.
Yeah, well, I recommend. I've got like the five books of Batman Black and White, and it's diminishing returns for sure.
Yeah, because they were doing it as a backup in Gotham Knights for a while there, and some of them looked okay. But it's that first miniseries. It really felt like everybody was like they knew they were going to work on something that was going to have longevity, and it was going to get collected, and was going to be in print forever. And you can tell they took it seriously. And there was every issue had at least one really stellar story or a fantastic pinup. Like I know you're not a big Mark Silvestri guy, but one of the ones I think he ever did was that pinup he did for Black and White. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm a massive Silvestri fan. I thought that recent Batman thing was a fucking head scratch and just like a tremendous wasted opportunity for all that artwork that they let him write it. But no, I love Silvestri.
Okay. I thought I remembered you being critical, but maybe it was just that specific project that you had a problem.
No, and did we not talk about Killer Instinct at some point? And the ebb and flow of like Jim Lee's art versus Silvestri's and that's right. But no, I mean Silvestri I would say by and large I probably prefer to Jim Lee, but anyway that's neither here nor there. Back on target. Let's save you some editing problems.
So the next page is Derek Thompson, which was driving me nuts because I knew the name, but I couldn't place who Derek Thompson was. And I'm looking at the page, it was like, oh, this is the guy that did that one Predator miniseries that had really rad artwork. And I remember that at some point I was going to get a page of his Aliens work, and it's pretty freaking cool.
Yes, that's exactly who it is. He did an Abe Sapien one-shot. He did that 4-issue Predator mini, which I bought, and I took a while to buy it. I struggled to find it, and then I finally bought it, and I struggled with the story, but ultimately had to keep it because the art at points is just mind-bendingly brilliant. It's just beautiful. And yeah, this page has some of that energy as well. But he's another guy now, left comics. He works for Lucasfilms.
Yeah, this is another one of those revelations where I'd never heard of this guy. I had no awareness of him until I hit that Predator miniseries and started reading up on it and found that he's got like that cult following, and there are people who think that's one of the best drawn Predator miniseries ever and all this kind of stuff. I was like, hell, I didn't know who this guy was, but I know now.
Yeah, and another loss to Lucas. And Dark Horse has plenty of them. There's another guy called Brian McConnell who did half a Predator miniseries, which was okay, but then did some Dark Horse Presents. He did a story called Imago in Dark Horse Presents, which was brilliant, like a fake Batman and Robin story. Brilliant stuff, and Fegredo did a cover for it. But he's another guy who just disappeared off into Lucas land.
And then things get really hectic because we're going from full page, at least a single full page from the artist, to half pages. Had to take a second to figure out what's going on because the story also goes wibbly wobbly at this point. So we got half a page of David Lloyd, who we've discussed from Glass Corridor already. And then here's the Moebius stuff. And it's, again, very abstract, ethereal. I dig it. It's cool. But it would have been cool to see a more proper Alien, since I don't think we're going to have this opportunity again.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Somehow insane that they managed to get Moebius. Fancy drawing half a page of an Alien comic? Seems slightly insane, but it's nice enough for what it is. You got a nice big sort of horrific body horror
orifice
sexual image on the first panel, and then a wibbly wobbly alien on the second panel. So it's okay.
And then we get half a page, and again, this at least the previous page, it was like, here's one half and here's the other half. Where this one, you've got 6-panel grid, pardon me.
6-panel,
and so 3 are by Dave Cooper and 3 are by Mike Allred. Because I remember going back, it's like, wait, Mike Allred did a page? And it's like, oh yeah, okay, I see it now. It's just weird stuff. I really dig the Dave Cooper stuff. I think it's a very interesting visualization of, a psychic battle out of something out of a Chris Claremont comic book. And then it switches over to the Allred, which I really am disappointed about in myself for not recognizing that shift. I should, for God's sake, know how Allred looks. But again, it's just such a weird page and such an unusual layout for a book like this that I just didn't catch the change up until it was too late. I'd really dig it, though. I think both artists do a great job of representing challenging concept.
Yeah, no, I like it a lot. I always have. It's David Lloyd, Moebius, Dave Cooper, Mike Allred. Like, you wouldn't necessarily plot it on a graph, but it looks great. And the thing with the facehugger swinging round from the 4th panel into the 5th, the blotchy panel borders on the first panel give the whole page like a slightly wibbly wobbly feel and make it hang together better than it otherwise might. Plus the alien head breaking the panel border in the second panel. I think overall that page works incredibly well, considering it's 2 different artists.
And then we get half a page by Tony Millionaire of Sock Monkey. Like that too. It's a little cartoony, but again, we've been here before, so no worries there. And then we come back out to the original art team of Leif Jones and John Stokes. This group actually survives. The people that we care the least about, and probably all of the alien stories we could possibly talk about, especially when it comes to a miniseries, they get to make it. It's this weird thing with alien stories. They kill off the people you halfway like, and then the ones that you couldn't give less of a shit about, we survived. Yay, us. But it's cool. I liked it. I enjoyed the experiment, respect the challenges that they faced, given how repetitive it is, not only within its own narrative, but also within the franchise. We've been here so many times before, but at least they managed to find fun, novel ways of playing around with that. The floating intelligence, at least it's something different we haven't seen before. They explain it away by it being like an experimental variation on the Xenozip. We get the bit where they actually use it to spray play onto aliens to make them fight one another because they no longer recognize each other and go a little bit crazy because it's a psychoactive element. It's doing a lot of interesting, twisty things where they could have been much lazier. So I respect that they made that effort on something they could have just coasted on. This could have easily been Aliens Gallery and just been a bunch of pinups. So the fact they even try to do this as a narrative, I gotta respect.
Yeah, and then a commitment to like the little backup bits that explain a little bit of the ins and outs of it, your director's commentary type stuff kind of rounds it out nicely. I think the one thing I get from it, as well as a lot of the Dark Horse Alien stuff, is there's kind of a love for it. You know, no one's phoning it in, even if the end product is shit, which this isn't. But even if that were the case, nobody's phoning it in. Like, there's a commitment from Dark Horse to try and do good comics. I'm just completely distracted now by these 2 pages that are neither credited in the internal credits nor the back cover listing of credits. Big mystery.
Yeah, and it's something that's frustrated me as the project has gone on, is that in the early days, you know, this was the pioneering of trades and essentially doing a collection of everything. And in the early days, Dark Horse was great about making sure that we got bonus material and forwards and afterwards, all this kind of good stuff. And then this is a project where you got the back matter in the individual comic books, and that's definitely appreciated. And it's increasingly rare, unfortunately. And I try to go through various online resources, someplace like Xenopedia, for instance, where a lot of times they're able to pick up the slack from errors and omissions. But a lot of the projects at this point, they're just basically verbatim. Here's what Dark Horse said. Here's the credits. And so if Dark Horse missed it, they missed it, and nobody's putting in the effort to do any investigation. And what also kills me is in a situation where they flip the 2 artists, it's easy enough for us to recognize those 2 people and flip them back again. But for these other people, these are not known people. Like, if they'd actually forgotten to credit John Paul Leone, we could have probably deuced that out. But those 2 pages, like I said, my guess is at least one of the pages is Richard Pace. That's the in terms of the style, that reminds me the most of him. But another problem is that the 2 pages are similar enough too, to where I'm not even 100% that they are 2 different artists. And again, that's part of the problem with the Sean Phillips Guay thing, is they have enough in common where I can definitely see why they would flip the credits. It's just that thankfully the Sean Phillips page is so clearly him that there's no argument about that. Maybe the potential would be that the 2 pages were his and the other artist was Rebecca Guay, but I know that that's not her style, so it had to be a flip. I don't know who these other 2 pages are by either. And I was hoping you'd be able to figure it out, but I'm not surprised because this is some pretty obscure style here. This is not somebody that we would instantly recognize from anything.
Well, it's just nondescript enough to be like, there's a bit of me that thinks it's, it could be like, there's a little bit of me that thinks like early Michael Gaydos on the left-hand page, and I actually think that they're not the same artist between the first and second page, but that's not helping. That just makes it 2 artists that we don't know. But I now have a mission for the rest of my weekend, so let's see how we go before you actually release this. We'll see if we can work it out. Motherfuckers.
Yeah, because there's too much. I don't know, because we've gone along on Havoc, which I knew we would. So I'm gonna have to see how it edits, because it might be that this is gonna be its whole other episode. So it may be to be continued next month. We'll see. Like I said, I'll find out before the end of the weekend.
Yeah, and it's funny actually. It's definitely 2 different artists. If you look at the second, like that first panel on the second page is pencils. So the second page is shot from pencils while the first page is inked. Okay, I'm on a mission now. I'm going to find out. There's something about the... Yep. I'm not going to waffle any longer. I'm on a mission now. Alrighty.
We're closed.
Oh, come on, man. Look, hey, we just got done dropping off supplies for this colony. You know, on the 7-2 rotation out of here. Higher up said we could stop by and grab a couple of drinks off for you. Yeah, for the road.
You cleared this?
Yeah. Come on, man. Look, don't be the man that stops us from a well-earned drink, all right?
Speaking of choice art, what's your page in this project?
In Havoc, specifically in Havoc?
We didn't actually do Havoc, so I guess we circle back to that one briefly. So what is your page on Havoc?
That's fine. I'd go for the Nowlan on Havoc off the top of my head. Sorry, Kevin Nowlan.
Oh, Kevin Nowlan. Okay. And then for me, it'd probably be either I really love the Igor Kordej. I loved the John K. Snyder. There's a number of pieces that I'd be perfectly happy with. myths. I wouldn't turn any of them down. There's maybe like 3 to 5 pages out of the whole project that I wouldn't be into having. But those are a couple of them that come immediately to mind. Obviously, as much shit as I gave the Gene Ha page, I'd like to look at that one on the actual board. It's so much detailing there. So curiously, I'm actually managing to avoid the Charvet, which wouldn't necessarily be expected. But there's not a lot out there to get. But yeah, there's these other pieces I feel more strongly about. Really, in particular, though, that John K. Snyder, that alien on that was just so cool. That one comes immediately to mind as one I'd want to have.
Aliens Havoc #1 was released on June 25th, 1997, according to Mike's Amazing World of Comics, reportedly selling 23,235 copies through Diamond Comic Distributors. It was ranked 111th for the month in units, but was inside the top 100 in dollars at 91st place. It sold a couple thousand more copies in the same month's Alien Special, which ranked 134th, and Havoc #1 also outsold Aliens Pig from earlier in the year by a few hundred copies. Havoc #1 significantly outperformed August 1997's Alien Purge one-shot by over 4,300 copies. However, Aliens Alchemy #1 just barely topped Havoc #1 by less than 500 copies. Aliens Havoc #2 was released on July 30th, 1997, shedding 3,648 readers for a total of 19,587 copies, ranking 141st in units and 119th in dollars. By comparison, Alchemy only lost 2,761 readers from issues number 1 through 2, still holding it well above 20,000. In fact, even Alchemy #3 outsold Havoc #2 by about 500 copies, speaking well to the drawing power of Richard Corbin. Havoc wasn't collected until 2008, 11 years later, as part of Aliens Omnibus Volume 5, and yes, they used Corbin on the cover. The Amazing Spider-Ben, Artist 57, Phillips 5 Vinyl, Bill aka the Bat Pod.
Alright, let me see. I don't know how you did it, but Waylon got y'all sitting nice and pretty.
Billy Hines, On My Way to Bluer Skies.
Let me get something strong. A couple of those aspens.
Bob at Negathumbzilla.
And one of those Remy. Do you mind?
Canoes, Cerulean Tomorrow, Chloe Brown, Chris at Bad Books for Beginners, Chris Dunford, Chris Lydon, Ed Moore at Teal Productions. Dead End Kid wrote of the Species episode, Dear God, did you just sell me on 1, Species Afterbirth, 2, and a Sci-Fi Network sequel, Have Mercy. I'm trying to get through all of Joel Schumacher's movies with Kiefer Sutherland. That's Self-Inflicted Harm Enough, Del Dracula, Dinty, Dirk Ashton, Hal Kolbeck, Derek W.C. of History of Comics on Film, Fantasy Consumer, Hicks, I Was Joe Was, JMT Productions, Julia Raoul, Kate God, Keith G. Baker, Lamar the Revenger, Lorenzo Sleestack, Meme Stealing Raccoon, Miguel Quiroz, Petros Gaspard, Professional Gawain Simp, Roger Preeb, Rogue Gun Works, Sam Lowe, Scott D. Galster, Siskoid, Superbound, Talk Nerdy to Me, Tatiana DeFries, and William Lang.
This has been a Rolled Spine podcast. All audio samples are believed covered under fair use laws. No copyright infringement is intended.